The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching the view screen with calm eyes. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency, checking systems and monitoring their course through the Kepler belt. They were 3 months into what was supposed to be a simple exploration mission. Nothing dangerous. Nothing complicated. That changed when the sensors started screaming. "Captain, we've got multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel," said Lisa Grant, his first officer. Her fingers danced across her console, pulling up data faster than the computer could display it. 12 ships. No, wait. 20 ships. "They're big, sir." Jake leaned forward slightly, studying the formations appearing on screen. The vessels were enormous, dwarfing his exploration ship like wolves surrounding a rabbit. Their hulls gleamed with some kind of energy shielding that made them shimmer like mirages. Beautiful and deadly. "Try standard greeting protocols," Jake said. His voice was steady, almost casual. "Let's see if they're friendly." Let's see if they're friendly. They weren't friendly. The response came within seconds. A face appeared on the main view screen, angular and covered in scales that shifted between blue and purple. 4 eyes regarded Jake with cold assessment. The universal translator kicked in, converting the alien's words into English. "Primitive vessel. You have entered territory claimed by the Zytharian Empire. Your species is unknown to us. You will surrender your ship and submit to Imperial authority. You have 1 standard cycle to comply. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." The transmission cut off before Jake could respond. Around the bridge, his crew exchanged worried glances. They all knew what their ship was carrying for weapons. 2 small railguns, meant for asteroid defense, and a handful of missiles. Against 20 warships, they might as well throw rocks. "Well, that was rude," Jake said. He leaned back in his chair, and a small smile appeared on his face. Not a nervous smile. Something else. Something that made Lisa look at him with sudden concern, because she'd seen that expression before during training simulations. It meant her captain was thinking. And when Jake Morrison started thinking during a crisis, things got interesting. "Sir, what are we going to do?" asked Pete Collins from the engineering station. He was a big man, with steady hands, and a gift for keeping broken things running. Right now, those steady hands were gripping his console a little too tight. "We're going to ask nicely for more time," Jake said. He tapped the communication controls, opening a channel back to the alien fleet. "And then, we're going to have a crew meeting. We're going to have a crew meeting." The alien commander appeared again on screen, looking mildly surprised that the humans were responding at all. Jake gave him a friendly nod, as if they were meeting at a social gathering instead of a potential execution. "Commander, I appreciate you reaching out," Jake said, keeping his tone polite and professional. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Aurora's Edge. We're explorers, not soldiers. We didn't know this space was claimed by anyone. Here's the thing, though. I can't just surrender my ship without talking it over with my crew first. We're democratic like that. How about you give us 48 hours to discuss your terms? We'll get back to you with an answer." The alien stared at him for a long moment. Its 4 eyes blinked in sequence, creating a strange rippling effect. "You request time to accept the inevitable?" "I request time to make sure everyone gets a vote," Jake said. His smile widened just a fraction. "Seems only fair." "Don." Another pause. Then the alien nodded once. "Granted. You have 2 of your planetary rotation periods. Use this time wisely, human. There is no escape from Imperial judgment." The transmission ended. Jake sat quietly for a moment, that smile still playing on his lips. Then he stood up and stretched, rolling his shoulders like he was preparing for a workout instead of facing down an alien armada. "Lisa, gather everyone in the common room. Pete, I need you to look at our ship's docking clamps and separation systems. Amy, start running combat simulations. Every scenario you can think of. I don't care how crazy they seem. Amy Walsh, their weapons officer, looked up from her station with wide eyes. Sir, are we actually going to fight them? We're one ship against 20. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe we're 7 ships against 20. Depends on how creative we get. He moved toward the door, then paused, and looked back at his crew. They looked scared. They had every right to be scared. But they also looked determined. And that was what he needed. Listen. I know this looks bad, Jake said. These aliens think they can just roll up and take what they want. Because they've got bigger ships and more guns. They're probably used to everyone rolling over for them. But here's what they don't know about humans. We're stubborn. We're creative. And we really, really don't like being told what to do. He let that sink in for a moment. Around the bridge, he saw spines straightening and jaws setting. Good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use these 48 hours to come up with a plan. It might be a crazy plan. It might be a dangerous plan. But it's going to be our plan. And we're going to show these empire builders what happens when they threaten Earth's people. Everyone? Clear? Yes, sir, they said in unison. Jake nodded and headed for the door. As he walked through the corridor toward the common room, he felt the weight of what was coming settling on his shoulders. 20 warships, 1 exploration vessel. The smart move would be to surrender and hope for mercy, but Jake Morrison hadn't left Earth to be smart. He'd left Earth to explore, to push boundaries, to see what was possible. And right now, what was possible was showing the galaxy that humanity didn't scare easily. His grin widened. This was going to be interesting. Commander Vexthal of the Zytharian Empire stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the human vessel with growing confusion. 30 hours had passed since his ultimatum, and the primitive ship was still there, floating calmly in space, like it had nowhere better to be. More concerning was what his sensors were telling him about the activity aboard that vessel. Status report. Vexthal commanded. His scaled skin rippled with irritation, shifting from blue to darker purple. Beside him, his intelligence officer adjusted his viewing apparatus with 3 delicate appendages. The humans appear to be cooking, Commander, said Seventh Mind ascending. The Quilarian spoke in precise, measured tones that somehow made the absurd statement sound even stranger. Our thermal sensors detect multiple heat sources, consistent with food preparation. We are also intercepting audio transmissions, music, laughter, conversation about recreational gambling activities. Vexthal's upper eyes narrowed, while his lower eyes remained fixed on the view screen. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered prey that responded to an execution deadline by having a party. Perhaps they are in denial of their situation. Some species crack under pressure. Possible. Seventh Mind ascending agreed, though his tone suggested doubt. He manipulated his console, pulling up files on the human species. I have reviewed all available data on this civilization. They are young. Only 300 of their years in space. No major military conflicts with other species. Their primary focus appears to be exploration and trade. By all logical assessments, they should not pose a significant threat. Then why does this concern you? Vexthal asked. He knew his intelligence officer well enough to read the signs. The Quilarians were master analysts, creatures of pure logic and calculation. When they expressed doubt, it was worth paying attention. Seventh Mind ascending tilted his head, a gesture he had learned from studying various species' body language. There is a notation in their file. Commander, from Scout Observer, 9th Probe returning. 2 of their years ago, he was conducting surveillance near their home system. His final report contained a recommendation for extreme caution. He noted that human behavioral patterns were inconsistent with standard threat models. He requested additional time to study them further. And, Vexthal prompted, and he never filed another report. His vessel was found drifting near the outer edge of their star system, heavily damaged. The official investigation concluded equipment failure, but Seventh Mind. Ascending paused, which was unusual for his species. The damage patterns were consistent with weapons fire. Primitive weapons, but effective. Before Vexthal could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the human ship. Vexthal straightened, expecting either a surrender or a desperate plea for mercy. What he got was neither. Captain Jake Morrison appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a casual lounge area rather than a military bridge. He was holding a ceramic container that steamed slightly, and that same strange expression was on his face. Vexthal had studied many species' facial gestures. This one was called a smile, often indicating happiness or friendliness. But there was something about this particular smile that felt wrong. Like a predator showing its teeth. "Commander Vexthal," Jake said pleasantly. "Thanks again for the extra time. Really appreciate it. Just wanted to check in and let you know that my crew has finished discussing your offer." "And you accept surrender terms?" Vexthal asked. "Actually, no," Jake said, taking a sip from his container. "We talked it over, took a vote, and decided we'd rather decline. Respectfully, of course. Nothing personal. We just prefer to keep our ship and our freedom. You understand." The audacity of the statement stunned Vexthal into momentary silence. Around the bridge, his officers made sounds of disbelief. One ship against 20? And the human was refusing surrender? It was either incredible bravery or complete insanity. "Human, you do not comprehend your situation," Vexthal said, his voice hardening. "We are the Zytharian Empire. We have conquered 12 species and 1,000 worlds. Your vessel cannot stand against our fleet. This is your final opportunity to submit peacefully." Jake's smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew slightly wider. "You've got bigger ships and more guns. That's true. But you're also a long way from home, and we're a lot closer to ours. And here's something you should know about humans before this goes any further." He leaned forward slightly, and his eyes locked onto Vexthal's with an intensity that was almost physical. "We really don't like bullies. We've spent our entire history dealing with bullies. And you know what we learned? Eventually, if you push back hard enough, bullies back down. So here's my counteroffer. You turn those pretty ships around and leave. We'll forget this ever happened. Everyone goes home happy." Vexthal felt his combat instincts surge. How dare this primitive creature speak to him with such disrespect? The Empire had crushed species far more advanced than these humans. This insult could not stand. "You have made a fatal error, human," Vexthal said coldly. "At the beginning of the next cycle, we will attack. Your ship will be disabled, and your crew taken as prisoners. You will serve as an example to others who would defy Imperial authority." Jake took another sip from his container, completely unfazed by the threat. "If that's how you want to play it, Commander, but I'm going to give you fair warning since you seem like a reasonable guy. When we meet again, things are going to get messy. My crew and I, we're not soldiers. We're explorers. But every one of us came from Earth, and Earth has a long history of people fighting when they're backed into corners. We're good at it. Really, really good at it. One ship cannot defeat 20, Vexthal stated flatly. "Maybe not," Jake agreed. That smile was still there, and now Vexthal was beginning to understand what Seventh Mind Ascending had meant about behavioral patterns being inconsistent. This wasn't the expression of a creature facing certain death. This was the expression of a creature that had already accepted the possibility of death and decided it didn't matter. "See you soon, Commander," Jake said. "Should be fun." The transmission ended. Vexthal stood in silence for a moment, processing what had just occurred. His tactical officer, a seasoned warrior named Kresh, approached with concern evident in his posture. "Commander, that human's behavior was highly irregular. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Request additional fleet support before engaging. Vexthal considered it, then dismissed the suggestion with a gesture. No. We will proceed as planned. The human is attempting psychological warfare, trying to make us doubt ourselves. It will not work. Prepare all ships for assault at dawn cycle. We will crush this resistance quickly and move on to more important matters. But as his crew dispersed to make preparations, Vexthal found himself studying the frozen image of Jake Morrison's face on the view screen. That smile, those calm eyes, the complete absence of fear. Seventh Mind Ascending approached quietly. Commander, the Quillarians have a saying. When prey stops running, it either has no hope or has a plan. I do not believe these humans have no hope. Vexthal didn't respond. He simply stared at that frozen smile and wondered if perhaps he should have requested those reinforcements after all. The Zytharian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, 20 warships advancing like predators closing in for the kill. On his flagship, Commander Vexthal watched the human vessel growing larger on his view screen. The Aurora's edge hung in space, seemingly waiting for its fate. No defensive maneuvers, no weapons powering up, just sitting there, within firing range in 30 seconds, reported his tactical officer. Vexthal nodded. This would be over quickly. The human captain had made a foolish choice, and now his crew would pay the price for his arrogance. Perhaps after they were imprisoned, they would understand the cost of defying the Empire. Then the human ship did something impossible. "Commander, the vessel is separating!" shouted the sensor officer, his voice cracking with surprise. On screen, the Aurora's edge split apart like a flower blooming. What everyone had assumed was a single ship was actually 7 smaller vessels docked together in a configuration that had somehow fooled their sensors. Each piece broke away with sudden bursts of thrust, scattering in different directions with acceleration that should have been impossible for ships of their size. How did they mask their true configuration? Vexthal demanded. Our scans showed one ship. Unknown, Commander. They must have some kind of stealth technology we didn't detect. The 7 vessels are moving at speeds that exceed our projections. They're pulling forces that should kill their crews, but the humans weren't dying. They were flying like demons, executing turns and maneuvers that violated every rule of safe spaceflight. The Zytharian fleet broke formation, trying to track multiple targets at once. Confusion rippled through their coordinated battle network as ship commanders called out positions and fired at empty space where human vessels had been seconds before. Maintain discipline, Vexthal ordered. Reform and concentrate fire. They cannot evade forever. But the humans weren't evading anymore. They were attacking. The first human ship came screaming in from above the ecliptic plane, a trajectory that no sane pilot would attempt. It fired both its railguns at close range, and the tungsten slugs hit a Zytharian cruiser's shield generators at a significant fraction of light speed. The shields flickered and died. The second salvo tore through the hull like paper, and the cruiser began venting atmosphere and debris. Return fire, Vexthal commanded, but his ships were already shooting. The problem was hitting their targets. The human vessels moved like nothing he had ever seen, jinxing and weaving through weapon fire with a chaos that defied prediction algorithms. On one of the human ships, Lieutenant Amy Walsh laughed as she pulled her vessel through a spiral that made her vision blur and her bones ache. The gravity compensators were screaming in protest, but they held. Barely. Amy, to Jake, she called over the communication channel. I've got a clear shot at their command ship, but I'll need to get close. Real close. Negative, Jake's voice came back. Too dangerous. Pull back and find another angle. With respect, Captain. Danger is kind of our whole situation right now. Amy checked her fuel reserves and ran a quick calculation. She had enough for one good burn. Maybe enough to punch through and get clear. Maybe not. Besides, you know what they say about fortune favoring the bold. Amy. That's an order. Do not engage on a suicide run. Amy looked at her console, at the tactical display showing Zytharian ships starting to reform their lines. If they got organized again, this fight would turn bad fast. One ship could change that. One well-placed strike could keep the enemy off balance long enough for the others to press the advantage. Sorry, Captain, she said quietly. Tell my sister she owes me $20. I bet her I'd go out with a bang. She cut the communication channel before Jake could respond and pushed her throttle to maximum. The ship leaped forward, engines burning at levels that made warning lights flash across every panel. She aimed straight for the largest Zytharian vessel, the one with all the fancy markings that screamed, "Important target here." The aliens saw her coming. They fired everything they had. Energy beams cut through space, missiles streaked toward her, and she flew through all of it with a wild grin on her face. Her shields died. Her hull started taking hits. She didn't slow down. "Come on, baby," she whispered to her ship. Just a little further. She hit the Zytharian flagship's engine section at full burn. The explosion was spectacular. A miniature sun that bloomed in the darkness of space. The flagship's reactor went critical, and the blast wave caught 3 nearby vessels, crippling their systems and sending them tumbling out of formation. On the bridge of his command ship, Jake watched Amy's icon disappear from his tactical display. His jaw clenched, and his hands gripped his armrests hard enough to make them creak. Around him, his crew worked in grim silence, but he could see the tears on some faces. "She bought us an opening," Lisa said quietly. "We can't waste it." Jake nodded slowly. "No, we can't. All ships. Execute pattern. Morrison 7. We're going right through their center line." "Sir, that's insane." Pete protested from engineering. "We'll be in crossfire from both sides." "That's the idea," Jake said. His grin was gone now, replaced by something harder and colder. "Lisa, calculate firing angles. I want to thread the needle between those 2 dreadnoughts. When they try to shoot us, I want them hitting each other instead." "Captain, the timing window is 0.3 seconds. If we're off by even a fraction, we're dead. Then we won't be off." "Pete, I need every bit of power you can squeeze from our shields. Everything else is secondary." "You got it, boss. Rerouting now." "Fair warning. This is going to violate about 40 safety regulations. Add it to my list. Execute on my mark." The remaining human ships regrouped, forming a loose wedge with Jake's command vessel at the point. They accelerated toward the Zytharian formation, and the aliens moved to intercept. Energy weapons charged, missile tubes opened, and targeting computers locked on. Jake watched the distance counter tick down. 5,000 kilometers. 3,000. 1,000. The Zytharian dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously. Exactly as he'd predicted. Exactly as he'd hoped. "Now!" he shouted. His ship dove downward in a sharp vector change that pushed the gravity compensators past their limits. The crew grunted in pain as the force tried to pull them through their restraints. On screen, the energy beams from both dreadnoughts crossed through the space where Jake's ship had been a fraction of a second before. The beams hit each other's vessels instead, shields flashing and failing under friendly fire. Jake's ship threaded between them, so close that his hull scraped against debris. Then they were through, and the Zytharian formation was broken, scattered ships trying to reorient and figure out where the humans had gone. "All ships, free engagement," Jake ordered. "Pick your targets and make every shot count. And somebody get me a casualty report. I need to know who we've lost." The battle dissolved into chaos after that. Individual ships dueling across kilometers of space. The Zytharians had superior numbers and weapons, but the humans had something else. They had desperation, they had creativity, and they had a captain who was willing to fly through hell itself if it meant getting his people home. Commander Vexthal watched his orderly battle plan fall apart and finally understood what that human smile had meant. It hadn't been confidence. It had been a warning, a promise that if forced to fight, humans would fight in ways that broke all the rules. And they were very, very good at breaking rules. 18 hours into the battle, Commander Vexthal's flagship bridge looked like a disaster zone. Consoles sparked and smoked from system overloads. Medical teams rushed through corridors carrying wounded crew members. And on the main view screen, 3 human ships continued their relentless assault against what remained of his once proud fleet. "Status," Vexthal commanded, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. 8 ships destroyed, Commander. 7 more, with critical damage. The humans have lost 4 vessels, but the remaining 3 refused to break off. His tactical officer's scales had gone pale with stress. They are using debris fields as cover and attacking from unexpected angles. Our battle computers cannot predict their movements. Rever 1. Action. Vexthal stared at the tactical display, watching the human ships dart and weave through space like insects that refused to die. How was this possible? His fleet had every advantage: better technology, more firepower, superior numbers. Yet these primitive explorers were tearing his forces apart through sheer insanity and improvisation. "They are broadcasting again, Commander," said the communications officer. "On all frequencies. It appears to be some kind of music? Let me hear it," Vexthal ordered. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything in the Zytharian cultural database. It was loud, chaotic, with heavy percussion, and stringed instruments that created a driving rhythm. Human voices sang in their language, words the translator couldn't quite capture, but emotions it understood perfectly: defiance, anger, the refusal to surrender. "Shut it off," Vexthal snapped. But he could see the effect it was having on his crew. The chaotic sound was disrupting their coordinated battle algorithms, introducing variables that their logical combat systems couldn't process. The humans were weaponizing their culture. An explosion rocked the flagship. Vexthal grabbed his command chair to keep from falling. "Direct hit to our port weapons array." One of the human vessels used a damaged Zytharian cruiser as a shield, came around behind it, and fired before our sensors detected the threat. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. The battle should have ended in the first hour. Instead, it had become a nightmare of improvisation and chaos. The humans weren't fighting by any rules, Vexthal understood. They used their own damaged ships as decoys. They broadcast false signals on captured Zytharian communication frequencies. They even hacked into the fleet's network and sent contradictory orders that caused 2 of his ships to nearly fire on each other. "Commander, the humans are hailing us again." Vexthal considered ignoring it, then decided he needed to understand what kind of madness he was facing. "Put it through." Captain Jake Morrison appeared on screen, and Vexthal was shocked by his appearance. The human's uniform was torn and burned in places. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. His face was covered in soot and sweat. But that smile was still there, though now it looked more like a grimace of pain turned into something defiant. "Commander Vexthal," Jake said, his voice rough but steady. "I wanted to check in. See how you're doing. Must be pretty frustrating." "Huh? 20 ships against 7, and now you're down to what, 12 functional vessels? You are delaying the inevitable, human. Even now, you cannot win." "Maybe not," Jake agreed. He wiped blood from his eye with the back of his hand. "But here's the thing, Commander. We don't need to win. We just need to make sure you lose. There's a difference." Behind Jake, Vexthal could see the human bridge. Crew members worked frantically at damaged stations. Smoke drifted through the air. One officer was being treated for burns while still operating his console. They looked like they were dying by inches. But they were all still fighting. "This is pointless," Vexthal said. "Surrender now, and I will show mercy to your crew. Continue fighting, and everyone dies. Jake's smile widened, showing teeth stained with blood. You still don't get it, do you? Let me explain something about humans. Commander, we're pretty good at lots of things. Art, science, exploration. But you know what we're really, really good at? What we've spent our entire history perfecting? He leaned closer to the camera, and his eyes were hard as diamonds. Killing each other. For thousands of years, we've fought wars. Big ones, small ones. Wars over land and resources and ideas. We've developed weapons that can destroy our entire planet. We've created strategies and tactics and doctrines of warfare that fill libraries. And when someone threatens us, we remember all those lessons we learned fighting ourselves. 2. Jake gestured to his damaged bridge. You see chaos. We see opportunity. You see a losing battle. We see a chance to make you pay for every meter of space you take. How many more ships are you willing to lose, Commander? Because we've got nothing but time and bad ideas. The transmission cut off, leaving Vexthal staring at empty screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They looked to him for the wisdom that had led the Empire to victory after victory across the galaxy. But Vexthal had no wisdom for this situation. The humans had turned every assumption he'd made on its head. They didn't fight for honor, or glory, or territorial gain. They fought because they refused to stop fighting. They fought like cornered animals. Except, cornered animals eventually tired. These humans just kept coming, seventh mind ascending. Vexthal said quietly. Your assessment. State. The Quilarian intelligence officer had been silent throughout the battle, watching and calculating with his species' trademark precision. Now, he spoke with unusual hesitation. Commander, the humans have destroyed or disabled 40% of our fleet. If we continue this engagement, projections indicate we will achieve victory with 70 to 80% losses. That assumes the humans do not employ any further unexpected tactics, which all evidence suggests is an unreliable assumption. And if we withdraw, we preserve our remaining forces and can report this encounter to High Command. They can make informed decisions about future contact with this species. Vexthal closed all 4 of his eyes. In his entire military career, he had never retreated from a battle. The Zytharian Empire did not retreat. They did not flee from inferior opponents. But as he opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display showing his shattered fleet, he realized something important. The humans weren't inferior opponents. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who had learned to fight against impossible odds, and they were very good at it. On the human command ship, Chief Engineer Pete Collins was holding together systems that should have failed hours ago. He had rerouted power conduits in ways that would make safety inspectors faint. He had bypassed 3 separate exploded systems, using what his grandfather would have called duct tape and prayer. The ship was running on spite and determination, which was fine by Pete because those were resources humans had in abundance. Captain, we've got maybe one more good engagement in us before everything falls apart, Pete reported. After that, we're drifting. Jake nodded, studying his tactical display. The Zytharian ships were pulling back, regrouping at extreme range. They could run. They could jump to faster than light and escape. But if they did, Vexthal would just bring more ships back. This needed to end here. Then the sensors officer spoke up. Captain, the Zytharian flagship is hailing again. On screen, Jake ordered. Vexthal appeared, and for the first time, Jake saw something other than arrogant certainty in the alien commander's eyes. He saw doubt. He saw fear. He saw respect. Captain Morrison, Vexthal said slowly. The Zytharian Empire acknowledges that further combat would be costly to both sides. We are withdrawing from this sector. Consider your system under provisional protected status pending review by High Command. Jake kept his expression neutral, but inside, relief flooded through him. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd made the Empire back down. Understood, Commander. Safe travels. The Zytharian ships began jumping to faster than light, one after another, until the space around the Aurora's edge and her sister ships was empty, except for debris and the distant stars. Lisa approached Jake's chair quietly. "Are you okay, sir?" Jake finally let himself slump forward, the exhaustion hitting him all at once. His whole body ached, his head pounded, his hands were shaking. "But we're alive, and we bought Earth time. That's what matters." He straightened up with effort. "Get me a channel to Earth Command. They need to know what's coming. Beast coming to Earth." 3 months after the battle in the Kepler Belt, the galaxy was talking. Word of what happened spread through trade routes and communication networks like wildfire. The story changed slightly with each retelling, but the core remained the same. One human exploration ship had fought 20 Zytharian warships and survived. More than survived. They had forced the mighty Empire to retreat. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives from 47 species gathered for an emergency session. The circular room hummed with dozens of different languages being translated in real time. At the center stood a holographic display showing tactical footage from the battle, captured by automated monitoring stations throughout the sector. Council members watched in silence as the human ships separated and attacked. They saw the impossible maneuvers, the chaotic tactics. The moment when Lieutenant Amy Walsh flew her ship directly into the Zytharian flagship, they saw Captain Jake Morrison thread his vessel between two dreadnoughts, using enemy fire against the enemies themselves. They saw improvisation and desperation turned into weapons more effective than any technology. When the footage ended, the council chamber erupted into argument. "This is clearly a threat that must be addressed," declared the Zytharian ambassador, his scales dark with barely controlled rage. "These humans are violent and unpredictable. They refused peaceful submission and chose warfare. They chose self-defense," countered the representative from the Quilarian collective, her voice calm but firm. "The Zytharian Empire issued an ultimatum of surrender or death. The humans simply chose a third option." The debate raged for hours. Some species called for immediate military action against Earth before humans could spread further into the galaxy. Others argued for quarantine, sealing off human space until they could be properly studied. A few brave voices suggested peaceful contact, though these were quickly shouted down by those who had seen the battle footage. Then a transmission arrived from Earth itself, and the council fell silent. The holographic display switched to show a middle-aged human man in a formal suit. He had graying hair and calm eyes behind simple glasses. The translator identified him as Director Kyle Barnes of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Kyle began, his tone professional and measured. "My name is Kyle Barnes, and I speak on behalf of humanity. We are aware that news of the recent incident in the Kepler Belt has reached you. We are aware that many of you are concerned, perhaps frightened, by what Captain Morrison and his crew accomplished." He paused, letting that sink in. Around the council chamber, representatives shifted uncomfortably. Frightened. The human had used that specific word. Frightened of them. "Let me be clear about something," Kyle continued. "Earth has no interest in conquest. We have no desire for empire. Our goal has always been simple. We want to explore the universe, learn from other species, and find our place among the stars. We sent the Aurora's Edge on a mission of peaceful exploration, not military expansion. But when that ship and crew were threatened with destruction for simply existing in space, they defended themselves. They did so with the tools available to them and the determination that all humans possess. This is not aggression. This is survival." Kyle's expression remained neutral, but his voice carried weight. "However, I want you to understand something about my species. We are adaptable. We are creative, and we are very, very good at learning from experience. The Aurora's Edge was an exploration vessel with minimal weaponry. It was never designed for combat. Yet faced with impossible odds, its crew found a way to survive. He leaned forward slightly, and now there was steel in his voice. Imagine what would happen if we actually built warships, if we designed vessels specifically for combat, incorporating the lessons we learned from that battle. If we devoted our considerable industrial capacity and scientific knowledge to military applications instead of peaceful exploration. The council chamber was absolutely silent now. Every representative was listening. "We don't want to do that," Kyle said quietly. "We would much prefer to be your friends, your trading partners, your fellow explorers of this vast universe. But make no mistake, if forced to defend ourselves again, we will do so with the same dedication that Captain Morrison demonstrated. And each time you force us to fight, we will get better at it." He straightened up, and his expression softened slightly. "So, here is our proposal. We are willing to open diplomatic relations with any species that approaches us peacefully. We will share knowledge, technology, and culture with those who treat us as equals rather than subjects. We ask only to be left alone, to explore in peace, and to defend ourselves if necessary." Kyle's face took on that same slight smile that Jake Morrison had worn facing Commander Vexthal. Not aggressive, not threatening, just knowing. Earth stands ready to join the Galactic Council as a partner, but we will not stand ready to kneel to any empire, no matter how powerful they believe themselves to be. The transmission ended, leaving the council to process what they'd heard. The Zytharian ambassador began to speak, but the Quilarian representative cut him off. "Before we continue debate, I would like to share the results of our analysis," she said. Multiple Quilarian minds had been working on probability models since news of the battle first reached them. Now she displayed their conclusions on the central hologram. "The Quilarian Collective has conducted extensive simulations of potential conflict with humanity. Our findings are unanimous. The hologram showed complex mathematical models, probability curves, and outcome projections. All of them painted the same picture. Humanity is a species that has spent approximately 10,000 years in constant warfare with itself. They have developed and refined military strategy to a degree we have never encountered. They treat combat as both science and art. More significantly, they possess a psychological trait that makes them extremely dangerous opponents. They do not acknowledge defeat until they are physically incapable of continuing to fight." She manipulated the hologram, showing footage of human history. Ancient battles with primitive weapons, world wars with industrial-scale destruction, conflicts that had nearly destroyed their own planet. They are survivors who learned warfare in the hardest school possible, fighting each other, and they have become extraordinarily proficient at it. "So you recommend treating them as a major threat?" asked one council member. "No," the Quilarian said. "We recommend treating them as equals, because the alternative is discovering just how dangerous they can be when properly motivated." The vote that followed was not unanimous. The Zytharian Empire and several allied species voted to classify humans as hostile and recommend containment. But the majority voted differently. By a margin of 31 to 16, the Galactic Council extended an offer of peaceful contact to Earth. 6 weeks later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Edge, now fully repaired and upgraded with some new technology gifted by friendly alien species. His crew surrounded him, including new members who had replaced those lost in the battle. Amy Walsh's sister, Kate, had requested transfer to serve in her sibling's memory. She now sat at the weapons console, wearing Amy's lucky medal around her neck. "Captain, we're approaching the council station," Lisa reported. "They're broadcasting welcome messages in 47 languages, including English." Jake smiled, though this smile was different from the one he'd worn facing Vexthal. This one was genuine, warm, hopeful. "Send our thanks and request docking clearance. And Lisa, send a message back to Earth Command." "Already done, sir." "They say good luck and don't start any wars. This. I'll do my best, Jake said. He looked around at his crew, these people who had faced death with him, and come through stronger for it. You know, I think this might actually work. The galaxy sees us differently now. Pete Collins grinned from engineering. Yeah, they're scared of us now. No, Jake corrected gently. They respect us now. There's a difference. Fear doesn't build lasting peace. But respect? Respect is something you can work with. As the Aurora's Edge docked at the massive council station, human and alien representatives prepared to meet face-to-face for the first time. In the station's observation areas, members of dozens of species gathered to catch a glimpse of these humans who had fought so fiercely and then extended their hand in friendship. Among the observers stood Commander Vexthal. He had been reassigned to diplomatic observation after his fleet's defeat, a demotion in all but name. He watched Captain Morrison exit his ship through an airlock, greeting the Quillarian Welcome Committee with that same casual confidence he'd shown during their confrontation. Seventh Mind, ascending, approached Vexthal quietly. You were right to withdraw, Commander. The probability models confirm it. Continuing that battle would have destroyed both our fleet and the humans, benefiting no one. I know, Vexthal said. He watched Morrison laugh at something one of the Quillarians said, completely at ease despite being surrounded by species that could have destroyed his world. Do you know what troubles me most, Seventh Mind? What, Commander? That human captain fought like a demon to protect his crew and his freedom. Then, the moment the battle ended, he extended an offer of peace. He switched from warrior to diplomat without hesitation. Vexthal's scales rippled with something that might have been respect. That is far more dangerous than mere combat ability. That is wisdom. Down on the docking level, Jake Morrison was indeed laughing with his new alien acquaintances, trading stories about the battle with the same ease that he might discuss a sporting match. But when one of them mentioned potential future conflicts, his expression became serious. We fought because we had no choice, Jake said quietly. We won because we were desperate and lucky in equal measure. But we're here now because we believe peace is better than war. Always. We just needed you to understand that if you force us to fight, we will. And we're really, really good at it. He smiled then, that knowing smile, and added, but we're also really good at making friends. And honestly, that's what we'd rather be doing. So, who wants to show me around this station? I hear you have 17 different types of restaurants, and I'm hungry enough to try them all. As the group moved off together, human and alien walking side by side, a new chapter began for both Earth and the galaxy. One built not on conquest or submission, but on mutual respect, earned through the hardest way possible. Because sometimes, the galaxy needed to see humanity's grin to understand what it really meant. Not a threat, not insanity, just a simple promise. We're here, we're friendly, but don't test us. We've survived worse than you can imagine. And if you make us fight, you'll understand why no one on Earth ever wanted to fight us twice.